Well, hello and welcome to Understand Men Now. I'm Jonathan Astley of jonathanastley.com, and I'm so excited to be doing this live stream for you today. Our topic, the 5 qualities a high-value man finds super hot. hot. Really quickly, if you're brand new to my YouTube channel, please hit the subscribe button, hit the bell so you can be notified of new videos. And if any time during this video the content resonates with you, please do me a favor and hit that like button so it can be seen in the YouTube algorithms. And lastly, this is your explicit language warning. If I occasionally use expletives to enhance a sentence, and if that is not your cup of tea, I suggest you log off right now because there might be an F-bomb in there once or twice. All right, let's talk about those 5 qualities a high-value man finds super hot in a woman. And number 3 is the most important. So really quickly, let's just define what a high-value person is, because I'm not sure I like to define people this way. And I only do this because of in the dating realm, we want to differentiate between those people who are ready and serious about a relationship versus those people that are probably dealing with codependency issues. They're dealing with psychological issues. They're dealing with emotional issues. Some people have sexual issues and that sort of thing. So I want to differentiate that when I say high value, man particularly, I'm talking about a person who is genuinely serious about a relationship. He's intentional about being in a relationship, and he's rather emotionally mature. Let me repeat that. He's rather emotionally mature. Now, I say rather emotionally mature because I quite frankly believe most human beings are suffering on some level of not feeling good enough, not feeling lovable, and not feeling likable. I would say our number one emotional health issue is a distressing lack of self-love, whether this is men or women. And quite frankly, men and women alike struggle mightily when it comes to expressing themselves at an emotional level and having the emotional acuity to actually be in a relationship. Let me repeat that, to have the emotional acuity to be in a relationship. What I mean by emotional acuity, I'm going to be talking about this in a moment, but those factors that actually make it possible to have an interpersonal relationship with another human being at a healthy way. And if you follow my channel, you'll know I always say a juicy, delicious, healthy way. So let's jump into those 5 qualities a high-value man finds super hot in a woman. And quite frankly, these are both, by the way, what I'm about to express is both inside of men and women alike. So when I'm talking about that high-value man and these particular qualities he finds super hot, these are actually the same qualities that you most likely will find super hot in a man. Okay, so let's start with number 1. And number 1 is simply your actions match your words. Or let me just say this, whether it's a man or woman watching this, is that your actions match your words. Let's not put it towards a gender. One of the fundamental principles that I think we can all agree is that we appreciate people who are in integrity, that they're impeccable with their word. If you're not familiar with the book, The 4 Agreements, I highly recommend reading the book, The 4 Agreements. The 4 Agreements are basically an outline to live in a state of integrity. And the first agreement is to be impeccable with your words. So your actions match your words on a consistent basis. Let me repeat that, on a consistent basis. There is always going to be times where something comes up, you made a promise, you have to cancel something, maybe possibly at the last minute. It could even be a date. That's very common. Things do come up. Sometimes we forget to call people. Those things happen. It's called being human. What I'm really talking about is your actions are consistent with your words. And so let me just say something, ladies. I know one of your biggest frustrations is about men who ghost, disappear, who are flaky. But I can tell you, as a man out in the dating realm, I equally find flaky women out there. I've had women who have initiated contact on a dating site, and I replied, and then they were gone. Okay? So this happens to men, this happens to women, that human beings' actions aren't consistently matching their words. So I believe that the high value person, man or woman alike, finds that very attractive, especially when it comes to being in relationship, to be with someone whose actions consistently match their words. Does that resonate with you? I hope it does. Number two, and this is so hugely important. In fact, this might actually be more important than number three, okay? Number two is you take personal responsibility for your choices. You take personal responsibility for your choices. Sadly here, especially here in the United States, most humans are suckling on the nipple of victim consciousness. Let me repeat that. They're suckling on the nipple of victim consciousness. And in addition to that, many women give their power away to men. Many women give their power away to a man. And what I simply mean is because you practically being indoctrinated in the belief that men are the leaders of the relationship, and you basically, and I find so many women find that they need validation from the man. And when they're not getting validation, they turn into pointing the finger at the man instead of taking personal responsibility for their choices. Again, this is differentiating between victor consciousness and victim consciousness. And again, sadly, I see this in the languaging of people all the time. And it can be simple as saying, and I've had, as a matter of fact, this has happened 3 times in the last week. I've had 3 women say, I got dumped by a man. I got dumped by a man. Well, you didn't get dumped. The relationship ended. That's what happened. The relationship ended. It wasn't happening to you. It happened to the relationship. But the minute we take it personally and we take no ownership in what happened, that's victim consciousness. And again, it's very subtle, but here I'm seeing consistent victim consciousness and not taking ownership in what happened. And the ownership can be simply, yes, a man ended the relationship. Okay, that's all that happened. He chose not to continue. You have to look at your part in the relationship, and maybe nothing happened. I get it. But at the end of the day, it's not anybody's fault. The fact that we point fingers at other people, remember, when you're pointing a finger at someone, there's always 3 fingers pointing back. And I suspect there were clues along the way. You just chose not to listen. A true victor in life looks at everything as a lesson and not as an outcome, okay? As a lesson and not as a destination. And we high value men and high value women find it very attractive when someone is in their empowerment and in their victor consciousness and not victim consciousness. Is this sinking in? I hope it is. Number 3, and I said this was most important, is what I call fighting fair. And what I mean to say is, and this is actually, I was just talking about this with a friend the other day, how so few humans, when you're in a conversation with someone and there's a disagreement, learning how to fight fair basically means is you listen to the other person's point of view on any particular subject that's happening. If there's a disagreement, you accept their point of view as being true for them. I'm going to repeat that. You accept their point of view as being true for them instead of saying that your point of view is right. Your point of view is right. A high value person, an emotionally mature person, doesn't look at relationships or doesn't look at conflicts as about right or wrong. It's looking at how can we be happy. And yet, sadly, so many people are in that, remember, they're in that victim consciousness, and they're also in that righteous consciousness that they have to be right instead of choosing to be happy. And I can tell you, when anybody is in relationship with somebody who they feel like they're always right, that's not very sexy. That's not very super hot. What's super hot is when you can accept my point. I'm using me as the example here. When you can accept my point of view as being true for me, and I can accept your point of view as being true for you, we can agree to disagree. And what usually happens is somehow we find our way into the middle when you come at it from a place of confidence, strength, and the ability to listen to the other person. And that is super important, because relationships are going to have friction. They're going to have bumps in the road. And it's truly important to learn this skill. And again, sadly, men and women alike are suffering. They're suffering at this area. And what I mean by suffering is they're very weak in this area of relationship. Now, ladies, I know you tend to feel like you compromise yourself all the time for a man. I get that's how you feel, but it's not very sexy to compromise yourself. What's most important is to listen to the other person's point of view, and you listen to their point of view and just accept it to be true. Okay? Number 4, this is empathy. Now, empathy doesn't mean simply I can feel your feelings. Empathy is I also care about your feelings, and we're going to take empathy a step further, and you actually care about your own feelings. Let me repeat that. You care about your own feelings. I witness women do this habitually, is they compromise their feelings in relationships because they're afraid to speak up to a man. They're afraid to speak their truth to a man for fear he's going to run away. And I'm here to say that that is not sexy at all. What is sexy is when you can speak your truth and do it in a kind way. If you haven't read my book, What the Heck is Self-Love Anyway? What the Heck is Self-Love Anyway? Chapter 1, Speak Your Truth. Do it with kindness. And when you're with the right man, the chapter 9 says, when it's sincere and from the heart, you can't say the wrong thing to the right person. I'm going to take a sip of coffee. By the way, my cup says, let that shit go. Let that shit go. All right. Number 4 was empathy. Most important is empathy for yourself. It starts with self. It starts with the oxygen mask first on yourself. And just remember, care about their feelings. And also what's most important is you care about your feelings. And by expressing your feelings, that's also known as a boundary. What's okay and what's not okay for you. And quite frankly, boundaries are very super sexy in relationship because it helps us guide one another into what we like and what we don't like. And number 5, transparency. Transparency. And what I mean by transparency is to actually have a successful relationship, 2 people must be transparent with one another. And what I mean to say, if something is material to the relationship, then it's very important that people speak up about what's coming up for them. And yet, sadly, men and women alike are hiding their feelings. They're hiding themselves from the relationship because they're fear of disruption. How do we get through? How does a relationship get to the point of really being a successful relationship? Is by overcoming those little bumps in the road. And when one isn't transparent in relationship, you can't build the deeper roots to trust. The deeper roots to trust that actually forms a strong, strong bond with another human being. Most relationships are weak like this. They just fall apart. I'm talking about like this and creating a strong bond. And it also requires being transparent. What I mean to say, if it's material to the relationship, you speak up to your partner. Is this sinking in? Is this resonating? I hope it is. All right, just to repeat those 5 things. First, your actions consistently matching your words. Number 2, you take personal responsibility for your choices. You have victor consciousness instead of victim consciousness. Number 3, you learn how to fight fair, which simply means you listen to the other person's point of view and you accept their point of view as being true for them, and they do the same for you. Number 4, empathy. And again, it's not just feeling feelings, it's also caring about other people's feelings. And most importantly, it's caring about your feelings. And number 5 is transparency. Transparency. If it's material to the relationship, to speak up. And these are 5 qualities that are super sexy and super hot to a man or a woman when you're beginning going down the path of an interpersonal relationship with another human being. All right, in a few moments, we're going to be taking questions, but before I do, I have a personal share, because many of you follow me and you followed my last broadcast. it was my last broadcast, I shared with everybody that I did a plant-based medicine journey, Hold one second. Hold one second. When I said plant-based medicine, I just want you to look at what these are. I'm not going to say the word out loud, but this is what the plant-based medicine that I took on Saturday, which happened to be the anniversary of my son's passing. Those who know me know my 19-year-old son, there's a picture of him, Connor, passed away 3 years ago on Saturday, July 3rd. And on that anniversary, I did a plant-based medicine journey to go inward, to ask Spirit, to ask God, to ask the universe for any messages that I would, need to hear. And I came up with I actually posted something I wanted to share with everybody that you might find interesting, because what came out of that experience was one of these things. And I'm going to share this with everybody. And I said, death has a way of clarifying what matters. Death has a way of clarifying what matters. On the anniversary of Connor's passing, I took a plant-based medicine journey to connect with my higher self without the overwhelming constraints of ego and fear, which medicine helps dissolve. The context surrounding death came up, and I had a profound experience for me. And one of the messages was death clarifies what really matters most in life, for me and maybe you as well. For example, humans seem to make huge mountains out of molehills, especially in the dating process, leading to victim consciousness. Here's the thing, unless you have to call a police, a doctor, or an attorney, everything that happens in our lives is an opportunity to choose love. Everything in our life, opportunity to choose love or fear. Fear includes judgment, comparisons, guilt, resentment, and even shame. These molehills that happen in our lives, from my perspective, are an invitation to choose love for oneself and for everyone else. While it's sad to witness such a divide amongst people, especially in the romantic relationship realm, my hope is that if I draw enough attention to the fear being expressed and experienced, maybe a shift in perspective will occur, and love will be the answer most everyone is seeking. Because as they say, all we need is love. Folks, I can't begin to tell you how profound this journey was. And a reminder to love, to have compassion, to have forgiveness, to stop pointing the finger at the opposite sex for everything goes wrong. Because what matters most is our inner journey. This is why when I wrote my book, What the Heck is Self-Love Anyway? It's a journey of personal development, self-help, and spiritual work to shift the narrative from victim consciousness and blaming others and taking ownership in our lives, because this is how we attract an amazing partner in our life, when we become whole and centered within ourselves on a personal development, self-help, and spiritual perspective. This is one of the reasons why I highly recommend reading the book, The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. This is a fantastic book to connect to your higher self, to those places that will take you to really being in your empowerment, to be in your victor consciousness, to be in that space. And I can tell you, without a doubt, sadly, it took losing a child for me to appreciate what matters most in life. And my hope is, by sharing this with everybody, you don't have to go through the experience I went through to have an awakening for yourself. Now, I know many of you, and by the way, I'm going to make one last comment before I take questions, because many of you write me such beautiful messages, and I can't thank you enough. I just want you to know I am not perfect by any stretch of the means. I am riddled with flaws. I'm riddled with insecurities, even in the dating, mating, and relating realm. I am not perfect. I have judgments. I have righteousness. I have an egoic side to me. Yes, there are times when I can even be narcissistic. And what I mean to say is I might be myopic to what's going on in the world, because I'm a human being just like you're a human being. Human beings are riddled with stuff because most of us are suffering on the inside in some way, shape, or form, centered around not feeling good enough, feeling unloved, and not feeling likable. So I'm here to say we have a choice. We can point the finger and blame others for our lot in life, or we can take a stand for empowerment. We can take a stand for our sovereignty. And that's my invitation for everybody. And my hope is that my message is a wake-up call for many of you to do the work. I recommend tons of, by the way, I've got a brand new book I'm going to recommend. It's called Personhood. I just got it in the mail today. Haven't started reading it, but this is The Art of Being Fully Human. The Art of Being Fully Human by Lee, if you can see that, Buscala. I hope I pronounce it right. Personhood. Check it out on Amazon. All right, it's time to take questions now. So if you have a question, please post a comment, write the word question, and then post the question. Or you can purchase a super sticker or super chat to post a question. And again, the funds that I collect there are going to a scholarship fund in honor of my son Connor. It's a scholarship fund for helping those who want personal development help. That's my goal, is to use the funds for that. All right, let's see what questions we have. And I saw that we had a super sticker a moment ago. Maria writes, "You're a hard to find type of..." Jonathan, oh, well, it's not my birthday yet, but it's coming. But thank you so much. And thank you for the super sticker. I appreciate that. All right. Taking ownership of our shit is so powerful. Exactly, Vanessa. Pat says, love the man side of women's need. Love the man side us women need to hear this. Thank you so much. You're very welcome, Pat. I appreciate that. All right, let's see what questions we have. Oh, here we go. Desiree. Question. Can you give examples of a person being transparent versus not? An additional example of a person being in victor consciousness. Okay, great question. So being transparent in the relationship. What I mean is if something is material to the relationship, then it's important to be transparent about it. Now, sadly, let me give you a crude example. You're on a dating site, you're talking to a man, and he doesn't happen to mention that he's still married. That would be an example of transparency. Now, a different example of that is that he might be separated but not divorced. I think it's important to express the difference between separated and divorced. That would be an example. If somebody is having doubts within the relationship, if they're having doubts, I think it's important to express those doubts, be transparent about it. Now, we always can feel doubt. But if there's a genuine doubt about being in relationship with someone, then I encourage everybody to be transparent and to speak up into that doubt. That would be an example of being transparent. In other words, if it's material to the other person, another example would be if you have an STD, being transparent about that. A lot of people lie about those things as an example. So these are just a few examples to demonstrate transparency. In other words, if it can affect another human being, then it's important to speak up. Now, victor consciousness basically means being in your empowerment. And yet here, and victor consciousness means also being in your sovereignty. So hang tight for a second, everybody. The other day, I did a video called "The 7 Ways Women Give Their Power Away to a Man." So let me just run these by you because these are a perfect example of not being in victor consciousness. In other words, the relationship is on his terms and you abandon your standards and boundaries. You're afraid to speak your truth. When the relationship ends, you focus on what he did and not your own self. You're waiting for him to constantly validate you, feeling like you can't live without him. And you think he's the only person in your life that will ever have chemistry with. These are examples of victim consciousness and not victor consciousness, because a true sovereign being understands that when two people get together in a car, okay, one person might say, hey, can you stop the car? Or, I mean, well, see, here's the thing. Maybe a car isn't a good example of this. Maybe you're getting onto a roller coaster, okay? A roller coaster would be a better example. And one person says, look, I need to have the roller coaster stop because I'm going to get off. They're going to end the relationship, okay? Here's the thing. And we better, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to accept that the fantasy we all were raised in, the whole previous indoctrination of how relationships were, doesn't exist anymore, because women are no longer dependent, most women, I should say, are no longer dependent upon men for their survival. Most women are not. So the old paradigm that used to be for centuries or throughout millennium doesn't exist anymore, because a woman can take care of herself. So now we're in relationship under a whole new premise, and the whole fantasy of how relationships should be should recognize that today most humans aren't very well suited for one another, because most humans lack emotional maturity. This is why do you think couples therapist offices are booming? In other words, and what I mean by booming, are flooded with couples needing help, because most humans lack emotional maturity. This is why I highly recommend reading the books I talk about. For example, How to Be an Adult in Relationship, How to Be an Adult in Relationship, along with reading the book. This book is hugely important. Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. Folks, most humans are very poorly educated when it comes to understanding the mechanics to a healthy, happy relationship. This is why I continually recommend reading the book 8 Dates by Doctors John and Julie Gottman. 8 Dates by Doctors John and Julie Gottman. If you don't understand the mechanics to a healthy, happy relationship, how can you actually be in a relationship with another human being? And I witness, ladies, you all think you're qualified to be in a relationship. Many of you are just as equally emotionally immature as men. Let me repeat that. Many of you are as equally emotionally immature as men. So stop pointing the finger at it always being the man's fault in relationship. Whew, that was a long answer to your question, but Desiree, thank you so much for that one. I appreciate it. All right. Renee writes, question. Why midlife gentlemen are so set in their man egomaniac attitudes? When a female is transparent, intentional, speak their truth, why do some become silent? It's not ladylike to ask first. Well, first off, what's this thing about ladylike? Let's eliminate the genders. Ladies, let's eliminate the penis and vagina. You're a human being. The reason why I want everybody to read the book Personhood is he's a human and you're a human. Number one, victim consciousness is making it about men instead of making it about a human condition. Okay, what you're expressing here, Renee, is a human condition and not a male condition. But the minute you point it out to men, you're setting yourself up for failure, ladies. And so to continue with what she said, why do men go silent? Because quite frankly, dealing with human emotions is a very scary thing for men and women alike. Dealing with human emotions is a scary thing for men and women alike. So rather than judge the other person, because we can judge them, but let me just tell you something. Judgment isn't love. Comparing other people isn't love. That's not love when we judge them and compare them to other people. What's truly loving is actually having compassion for other people. Both having compassion for yourself and having compassion for other people. It's a scary thing to address emotions with another person. And if you're unskilled at it, like many men are, as well as women are just as equally unskilled. And I know you think otherwise, ladies, but trust me, this is equal to human beings. Women just might vomit their emotions more than men, but it doesn't mean you're better skilled. And you know how I know this? Folks, there's a TV show called Couples Therapy on Showtime. Couples Therapy on Showtime. Genuine, true couples therapy sessions. The women are just as bad at expressing themselves as men. I'm going to repeat that. The women, the couples, the men and women in the therapy sessions, the women are just as bad as the men in expressing themselves, because most people just vomit their feelings. Men tend to be more silent. Women tend to vomit. What I mean by vomit, it's just like this. Most humans don't know how to communicate well. This is why, again, I highly recommend reading this book, Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. Is this sinking in? Is this resonating? Please let me know by giving me an amen and a thumbs up while you're at it. Thank you. Great question. I appreciate that, Renee. Sadie writes, Jonathan, I'm online dating and getting a lot of messages. However, the men are all unattractive to me. Should I say yes and go out on some dates? Okay. Sadie, this is true for men and women alike. Basically, 99 out of every 100 people you will view on a dating app most likely you're not attracted to them. And guess what? They're not attracted to you either. There's going to be hundreds and hundreds of men that are not attracted to you, just like there's going to be hundreds and hundreds of, men you're not attracted to. Okay, so that's just the reality of it. Now, as far as saying yes to dates, here's the thing. If someone, listen, unless they're missing teeth and got a beer gut the size of Texas, if he's a pleasant enough looking human being and he writes a nice message to you and you guys have a nice exchange, go out and meet them. Now, here's the thing. In my private coaching, by the way, if anyone's interested in private coaching, check out the link in the description to schedule a free discovery call. I teach you how to vet for emotional maturity and learn how to ask better questions in the early stages of dating. And I can tell you, most of you ladies are terrible at asking the better questions. You're good at asking questions like, what kind of car do you drive? Do you own a home? Do you have a good job? I'm being tongue-in-cheek silly, but it seems like more people focus more on the superficial things. They focus on, where's that? This is a picture of an iceberg, Can you see that? That picture of the iceberg? On the top, you see a little bit of ice, and at the bottom, there's all this. At the top is chemistry. At the bottom is shared values, emotional maturity, and blendable lifestyle questions. Most of you are so focused on the top that you're not even thinking about the bottom. The bottom represents compatibility and the top represents attraction. My suggestion is focus on shared values, blendable lifestyles, and emotional maturity instead of the attraction piece. Now, I understand chemistry is important. Of course it is. But ladies, let me just tell you something. Most humans believe that chemistry equals relationship success, and that's the furthest thing from the truth. Chemistry does not equal relationship success. Shared values, blendable lifestyles, and emotional maturity gives you the greatest chance for success when there is chemistry. But most of you are focused on just leaning back into your feminine energy because the man is going to claim you. And men are the leaders of the relationship. And if this is so fucking true, why is it a dysfunctional mess out there? Ladies, why is it a dysfunctional mess out there? Because humans are riddled with negative patterns and limiting their beliefs in their life because they're suffering on the inside, because in many cases they haven't healed their childhood wounds and traumas, their adult traumas. This is why I'm such a big proponent of everybody doing the Hoffman process. The Hoffman process. This is a deep dive into healing. Have you done the work? I can tell you, a lot of you think you have, and many of you have said to me, well, Jonathan, I don't have time to read a book. Ladies, if you don't have the time to invest about $150 on all the books I recommend and give yourself 1 year to do some deep work, to be in a position where you can be in a healthy, happy relationship, then guess what? The definition of insanity will sink in because you'll be doing the same things over and over again and expecting different results. And I'm here to wake you up to trying it a different way. Can you do that for me, please? I hope so. All righty then. Let's see where we're at. Bum, bum, bum. Oh, wow. Sorry, folks. We have lots of questions here. All right. Catherine writes, do men take the effort to get to know about us as much as we do them? Catherine, great question. So the answer is men and women equally do a terrible job getting to know one another. Let me repeat that. Men and women equally do a terrible job of actually getting to know one another because the dating process is so fucking superficial. It's all about, let's just have a good time. You know what? Focus on having a good time. You know what? Did you have a good time? Let's have a good time. It's all about having a good time. Instead of being intentional by asking really good questions. I got to tell you something. Anyone that wants a date with me, I've got an intense questionnaire a woman must complete if she wants to have a date with me. I do it on the phone. I rattle off all these questions because I don't have time to go get my car to meet someone if we're not on the same page. Now, I will tell you, every dating coach will tell you, never interrogate, never ask questions, do not interview. The stupid book, The Rules, said don't interview people. I'm here to say, fuck that shit. Interrogate people. And I say this with a little bit of tongue-in-cheek. I'm saying a little tongue-in-cheek. And what I mean to say is be intentional and ask better questions. Yes, it is an interview process there. You're interviewing them for the job of your boyfriend, and we men should be interviewing for the job of you being our girlfriend. So your original question, I'm here to say women are just as bad. I got to tell you something, ladies. I'm a single man out there. I can tell you women are just as superficial and in their egoic entitlement just as much as men. I've gone on dates where women haven't asked me one question. And by the way, folks, I kind of have a cool job. You would think you'd want to ask me about it. But I've witnessed women that all they did was talk about themselves, just like you women have witnessed men that all talk about themselves. This is a narrative that is very frequent for both men and women alike. And Catherine, thank you for asking that question. I really appreciate it. Okay. Pat says, sometimes I feel so humbled by your advice or take on the answers. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Tamara says, I want to love myself and him unconditionally. Can that heal him and me? So first off, Tamara, you cannot heal any other human being. You can be compassionate and loving for another human being. You can't heal another human being. What you can do is always lead by example. Now, I will tell you this, ladies, I'm going to tell you something. The way a man gets to his heart is through a woman. If it wasn't for a special woman in my life, we weren't able to go the distance, but it was a great relationship for both of us. In fact, we're still very friendly to one another, but I think we both healed one another. And I will tell you, it took a woman for me to get to my heart where I'm at today. So I'm going to suggest lead by example. You may not be the right partner for them, but if you continually lead by example, you will attract in a partner who hopefully will match you where you're at in your life. I hope that helps. Thank you so much. Great question. And please hit that like button, everyone. All right. Joan says, I spoke my truth at dinner the other day. It felt good to dive deeper. I'm not waiting around, but I'm still on the path of self-development. My journey has a way to go. Yay, Joan! Speak your truth to a guy. It's the only way, ladies. Speak your truth. Do it with kindness. Desiree says, I'm reading Nonviolent Communication now. Way to go. Catherine says, do men make the effort to learn? Oh, you've already did that question. Thank you. Grace says, I somehow taught myself to step outside myself, and I think about whether what I say or my mood portray me as poor victim. It's been a useful tool. Yes, stepping outside of oneself and looking inward to say, how am I contributing to what's happening in my life? Again, how am I contributing to what's happening in my life? Taking ownership of everything. Pat says, feeling threatened by me taking care of him could be why he cheated. I don't believe that's why. it's an issue of threatening. I think when two people are disconnected from one another, they oftentimes seek connection elsewhere when two people. So it's not an issue of being, see that narrative? He was threatened by me, okay? Now, you could look at that as either I did something wrong or he did something wrong, okay? But that's not victor consciousness. Victor consciousness is to say, you know what? Maybe we were disconnected from one another, and maybe that was the reason why that person chose that. It might be that they have a sexual addiction. There might be 100 other things, but there's always two people in an equation, not one. I know it doesn't feel that way, but unless you have to call a doctor, an attorney, or a policeman, there's always two people in a relationship, not one. You have to look at your part. At least that's my invitation. And Rhonda says, you have that correct, Jonathan. We're both at fault. Thank you. All right, Maddie says, question. Have you read investigative memoirs, Nothing Personal, My Life in the Dating App Inferno yet? I 100% know it's almost impossible to meet people sans apps after 40, but her info is scary. No, Maddie, I'm not familiar with that. Now, I do want to say this, folks. Okay. We are in a whole new paradigm because of online dating apps, and that's not going to change, okay? In fact, I suspect at some point, we are now, for people over 45 years old, roughly 50% of all new relationships are happening through an online connection. And during the pandemic, most dating came through an online connection. So online isn't going away. The problem with online is we are no longer meeting people who live in our social circles, that know people that we know. We're meeting total strangers. This is why vetting someone is so hugely important. This is why asking better questions is so hugely important. By the way, a link to a discovery call with me will teach you, again, if you are ready to hire a coach, if you're single and ready to find your perfect guy, I'll help you along the way, teach you how to ask better questions, because online dating now requires to be a detective, because we no longer are meeting people who we know, who know us, who know our family, who know our friends. When we're meeting total strangers, we have to interrogate people. We have to Google people. We have to do background checks. And don't be naive to this. You literally have to investigate a person. And what blows me away is how many of you will engage in conversations with men 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months long because they're long distance that you never meet. You're wasting time. Here's the rule of thumb. You have to be able to meet someone in less than 3 weeks. Okay, you have to meet someone in less than 3 weeks, preferably even shorter than that. Have a short exchange via emails, have a short exchange over the phone, ask some really good questions, ask them for their last name, look at them on Facebook. You have every right to know as much about them before at least before the penis goes inside the vagina, folks. You have every right to learn as much as you can about another person. And I suggest doing it sooner rather than later, because guess what? The minute you have chemistry, you're fucked, because you're going to go down the path only to find out that the wrong person. Be more intentional. Ask better questions. That's my invitation for everybody. All right. I'm looking for some questions. Kelly says, I love men. I can't be anti in what I want. Exactly. Ladies, many of you are anti-men and you wonder why you're having problems with relationship. I'm going to tell you something. I had one client worked with me and I told her, okay, I'll never forget this. We had just finished the coaching program. And she was struggling for 6 months. And finally, she called me up after she'd gone through my boot camp that I have. She called me up and said, Jonathan, I'm really struggling meeting men. And she was complaining about men and she was being negative about men. And I told her the following: I want you to start singing the song, It's Raining Men. Instead of it's raining high value men, it's raining high value men, it's raining. You know the song, It's Raining Men? Well, I add high value men. She literally, within 45 43 days of starting to sing the song regularly, she got a message from a guy on a dating app. They went out on a date a week later. They had one of those great 5-hour dates that turned into a date the next day and the next day and the next day. 8 months later, they got engaged, and I went to their wedding a year and a half after they met. Simply by shifting her perspective, by saying it's raining high quality men. In other words, her negativity was blocking her from attracting great guys. And I invite you to start changing that narrative, because many of you are in a victim consciousness blaming men instead of victor consciousness, looking at men as being grateful for men. Folks, we have to be grateful for one another. Stop hating one another and start loving one another. That was the message I got from Connor when I did this journey, okay? Start loving on one another, because love is the answer. Love for self and love for humanity. Can I get an amen? Thank you. Maddie says, 8 dates was a fantastic read. Thank you, Maddie. Ashton says, well said about women also being emotionally immature. Wanting a commitment is not synonymous with maturity. Bump, 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 bump. Oh my God, that's exactly it. Ladies, just because you desire commitment maybe more than men doesn't make you any more emotionally mature than men. And I say this as a man out there, ladies. You all think you're so emotionally mature. I can tell you, I mean, most humans have weak emotional maturity at best. Joan says, agree, Jonathan, men and women alike. Thank you. Ominous says, amen. Thank you. Joan says, amen. Nora says, amen. Thank you. Vanessa says, amen. Kitty Cat says, amen. Rhonda says, amen. Elaine says, amen. Renee says, amen. All right. Joan says, relationships should be equal. No one is in charge. You know, look at, I'm in full agreement. First off, ladies, you are in charge of your relationship destiny, not men. You are in charge of your relationship destiny, not a man. So you get to decide how you want your life to be. So when you approach it intentionally, when you approach it from a place of curiosity, when you approach it from a place of, look, you talk to a guy, say, look, I'm looking for a fully committed relationship. What does that look like for you? Bump, bump, bump. I'm looking for a fully committed relationship. What does that look like for you? And then when you hear what he says, find out if you're on the same page, and then invite him to this. Say, I'm looking to co-create a juicy, delicious relationship. Let me repeat that. I'm looking to co-create. Means it's not you in charge. It's not me in charge. We're both in charge of making this happen. Is that something you'd like to explore? Once you've decided you want to spend time with one another, stop being so naive and stop expecting men to be the leaders of the relationship. Ladies, the most common search term on the internet is, why are men commitment phobic? Why are men emotionally unavailable? If you know that this is the problem, then start from the premise of shifting that narrative, because all you're doing is finding out why. Let's turn it around and shift the narrative for you by learning how to ask better questions. Schedule a discovery call with me so you can learn how to do that. Oh, okay. Kelly says, men and women do have communication problems even with the same sex, aka peer pressure. Exactly. Thank you. Nikki says, please do not emotionally vomit imitation again. Okay. I don't know what that means, but thank you. Tatiana says, may I ask your advice is for a woman who is looking for this kind of advice, but interested in another woman. Would your advice on this video and past videos apply to them? My advice is generic to men and women alike. It's simply human behavior. All of the books I recommend are for men and women alike. Yes, it applies to both. Jenny says, personally, if men and women would just grow the fuck up and get real with themselves before dating. Here's the problem with that, Jenny, and I understand where you're coming from. Here's the thing. Most human beings, men and women alike, adults, are emotional children. They are emotional children, men and women alike. So here's the problem. A child doesn't know that they're actually doing something that can affect another human being because they're emotional children. We are very, here in the United States, it's actually different in places, other parts of the world. But here in the United States, most humans are suckling on the nipple of, I need you to love me so I can feel good about myself. I need you to love me so I can feel good about myself. I need you to love me so I can feel good about myself. We are a society here in the United States of incredibly codependent personalities. This is why I highly recommend reading the book Codependent No More, because the need for others to make us feel good about ourselves is part of the reason why men and women are suffering on the inside so much. So going back to your question, it's not, here's the thing. How can you know you're doing something wrong if you don't see it, if you're unaware? It's like telling a child, don't touch a fire, but they don't know that fire is dangerous. And many men and women don't realize that they're actually hurting other human beings with their poor, weak emotional skills. The other thing is this. Most men and women dating today, they want connection, they want companionship, they want sex, but they're not ready for partnership. Let me repeat that. They're not ready for partnership. I highly recommend reading the book Mating in Captivity by Esther Perel. Mating in Captivity by Esther Perel. She talks about what today's relationships are known as stable ambiguity. Stable ambiguity. What that means to say is that they're monogamous and exclusive, but they're ambiguous to where this relationship is going. Because here's the thing of midlife. Most men in particular are no longer on the hunt for a wife. When a man is on the hunt for a wife, as he is in his 20s and 30s, he's looking for somebody to make babies with and raise a family. He's intentional about the process. The problem with midlife is most folks are just seeking connection and companionship and sex without a destination. And this is why the dating process is so fucking dysfunctional. So it requires, ladies, if you want to have a fully committed relationship, then start being more intentional. Again, read this book. And here's the deal. Before the penis gets to go inside the vagina, buy 2 copies of this book, give him a copy of the book and say, let's read this together to decide if we're a good fit for one another. But Jonathan, that will scare a man away. Yeah, it will. It's going to scare the wrong guy away, because when you're following this book, all it does is temporarily get you the really shitty guys, because this is a manipulative way of approaching relationships, instead of the healthy way of approaching relationships by doing this. Ladies, I highly recommend, and by the way, I am getting so many emails from women thanking me for suggesting buying 2 copies of this book and giving it to the person that they're dating, because they're now having real conversations with men and they're actually developing something real instead of the fantasy of just leaning back in your feminine energy, because feminine energy is always going to attract the perfect guy, right? Yeah, right. Okay. Folks, you guys know me. This is just the way I operate. All right, let's see what other questions we have. Oh, someone says I got the Audible for myself. Okay, great. Jenny says nobody's penis is going in this vagina because I'm 54 on a sexual sabbatical, an intentional one. Way to go. Thank you. All right, I am the prize says there are people that look for commitment just to have kids, and then later on in their marriage, they really want somebody that they can actually enjoy. That does happen for men and women alike, yes. All right. Kelly says, my ex was codependent, that it scared me, and he was trying to make me codependent, and it was scary to me. No, thanks. My ex is 40 and still looking, and I'm 29 wanting to be a business owner and a mommy. Good for you. All right, do we have a question? Oh, so Desiree says, what do you mean by destination? Great question. So here's the folks, I want to say something. What's the point of dating? What's the point? What's the purpose of dating? The purpose of dating in my book is to explore being in a relationship with someone. Now, here's the thing. You can be in a relationship with someone 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. That you can be in a relationship that long. My point of view on relationships is the purpose of a relationship is to explore partnership with one another. And I give a relationship 1 year to decide if they're going to explore a partnership that's long-term or move on. What's the fucking point of spending years with someone that doesn't want to go the distance with you? So I'm here to say, if you're not exploring partnership together, and that means teamwork building skills, that means maybe even, investing your financial resources together. And a lot of people are afraid to do this after they've gotten divorced. So this is why so many relationships are unstable. They're ambiguous because there's no solid foundation being built, because all you're doing is focusing on having a good time and being companions with one another, connection with one another, and sex. But oftentimes for men, they're going to do it their way because they're not intentional about being partners with someone. And this is why so many of you ladies are frustrated, because you're not getting what you want out of a relationship. So I'm here to invite you to establish your standard. What is your standard? So for example, I'm going to share my standard with everyone to give you an example. My standard is simply this. In the early stages of the dating, once my woman I'm dating and I decide that we want to be in a relationship together, I'd like us to spend 3 or 4 days and nights a week together, doing shared activities, hobbies, mutual interests, spending time with family and friends, traveling together, teamwork building skills, which includes our personal and our professional lives, helping each other as a team with one another. Intimacy, which includes physical and emotional intimacy that leads to living together or getting married. That's my standard, okay? That's my standard. I set that up right from the beginning. And if someone says, well, I don't have enough time with that, I'm raising children, I've got work, I've got yoga, I've got this and I've got that, and I can give you 1 day every other week, and I'm going to go, well, then we're not aligned with one another. In fact, my kind of partner will want to do a journey with me. So my point is, establish what your standard is and stick to that standard. A boundary is sticking to your standard. And if you're not with somebody who wants that standard as you have it, then choose somebody who does, because magic fairy dust isn't going to change someone. But Jonathan, I have so much chemistry with this guy. Yeah, he only wants to see you once every week, every other week on his terms. I don't care how great the chemistry is. If you don't share the same values, if you don't have blendable lifestyles, if they don't have emotional maturity, and if you don't establish what this looks like, it's going to be very difficult to develop the roots to trust that's going to take this relationship to that level of being juicy, delicious, and healthy. Is this making sense? Is this resonating with you? Is this sinking in? Please let me know. All right. I will take a journey with you, Jonathan. Way to go, Ron. I appreciate that. Alice says, yay, or yeah, thank you. Joan says, I must be really lucky. I haven't had many problems with men. Way to go, Joan. Because you most likely stand in your empowerment. Listen, folks, don't take on other people's shit. Okay, Desiree asked, blendable. Great question. So, folks, I often talk about, remember in my analogy on the iceberg, it says here, blendable lifestyles. So let me give you an example of blendable lifestyles, okay? Let me give you an example. Okay, so I go to work from 9 to 5. You go to work from 5 p.m. till 2 a.m. So we don't even have, I'm giving you an example of where our lifestyles are slightly different. I live in Los Angeles, you live in New York, okay? And you're fully entrenched where you live in New York, and I'm fully entrenched where I live in Los Angeles. Going to be difficult to blend our lives together. I'm just giving you extreme examples of what doesn't work. You're raising children, you're with somebody who's an empty nester who doesn't want to raise children. That's another example of lifestyles not matching. If your lifestyles aren't able to blend together, it's going to be very difficult to make a relationship work. So you have to you've got to look at a person's lifestyle and say, how is their lifestyle in relationship to my lifestyle? Because the fantasy of chemistry and love is not going to solve a lifestyle issue. Blendable lifestyles is how you develop the roots to trust that take the relationship to the next level. Is this sinking in? I hope it is. Thank you. Catherine, thank you for the super sticker. Question. Is it possible and or how to break through to and with a man with narc tendencies, but shows true vulnerability sometimes, wants to grow, but is shut down now? 1.5 years engaged. Great question. So, by the way, every human being has narcissistic tendencies. Let me repeat that. Every human being has selfish tendencies, righteous tendencies, entitlement tendencies. By the way, folks, I do, okay? So I'm just going to say I do, and most people do. We can be myopic. That's very common. Now, people that have true vulnerability, true empathy, absolutely can shift perspective. It requires doing the inner work. I highly recommend everybody doing the book, The Hoffman Process, to shift negative patterns and limiting beliefs in life that causes people to be stuck. Yes, a man can do that and a woman can do that. You can't do it for them, though. You can't do it for them. Catherine, thank you for your question. I appreciate it. Kimberly writes, question. Why am I having such a hard time getting over my ex when I couldn't trust him and he started drinking at 7 a.m. when we had amazing times and no arguing? Been 2 months. Kimberly, great question. Most likely there's 2 reasons going on. So I want you to buy 2 books. One is called Attached by Amir Levine and Rachel Heller. And I want you to get Getting the Love You Want by Harvell Hendricks and Helen Hunt. Okay, these 2 books. Attached will help you understand what's known as love attachment style. Most likely you're attached to this person from either a love attachment style or Harvell Hendricks this book talks about the imago. What this is talking about is we tend to choose people much like our parents because we're trying to relive a childhood need to be loved by our parents. I read those 2 books and I promise you, you'll most likely feel a lot better after you read those 2 books. I would just do a deep dive on those books right away. And the sooner you get them done, the sooner you'll be ready to move on. Great question. Thank you so much. Desiree says, question. So if the lifestyles are blendable, should a 10 to 15 year she gap matter either way whenever it's the woman or the man? So a 10 to 15 years age gap. By the way, I've been in relationship with women 10 years older than me. Actually, I've been in a relationship with a woman 12 years older than me, not that long ago, and women younger than me. Here's the problem with age gaps. Sometimes it's a relatability issue. Sometimes there's value issues. But ultimately, age should not matter as much unless it's a reflection of your values. And often, remember I said shared values is so important. Oftentimes, people that have an age gap sometimes don't share the same values in life, and that can be the problematic problem in a relationship. So that's my invitation, is look at your values. Great question. Thank you so much. Susan writes, hey, Jonathan, question. Is it a good thing for a woman to be completely open and vulnerable to an online guy whom you've only texted, yet he loves you? First off, he doesn't love you. That's such bullshit. You can't love someone you've never met, okay? You can be infatuated or you can have lust. Let me repeat that. You can feel limerence or lust. Hey, Google. Hey, Google. Oh, my phone isn't. I was going to say, what is limerence? Hey, Google, what is limerence? Oh, it's not coming up.
According to Mayo Clinic, immune system
glands. Oh, it came up with immune system. Limerence means extreme infatuation. That's all he's feeling. Okay. So, and that's childlike behavior. That's childlike behavior. So what's the point of being vulnerable to a guy that's acting like a child? Children, listen, meet each other, see if there's a physical attraction, ask really good questions to determine if you're a fit for one another, and then explore the process. Okay? But and by the way, being vulnerable, authentic, and transparent is always a good thing, so long as it's not divulging something that you feel is secret in your life. I'm a big proponent of being vulnerable, authentic, and transparent with every human being, just so long as you're not divulging something that you would regret. That's all. All right. God, we have great questions. Kelly says, lustful infatuation. Yes. Deanna says, Jonathan, you are making me feel so good about taking my time, asking the right questions, learning the new me. The move is shortly, so we'll see how we blend lives. Way to go, Deanna. Thank you, Joan. I'm strong and I'll be better. Okay. All right, let's see. All right, Ola says, you scare every guy away when you speak your truth. Guys don't want you to want them. They want to chase, they can't have. Chasing is a shadow for life. That's my experience. Yes, very immature people chase what they can't have. Let me repeat that. Very immature people chase what they don't have. I will never, ever, ever, ever chase a woman. Now, that doesn't mean I won't invest in a woman, but I'll only invest in a woman to the extent that she invests in me. It's a two-lane street. The book, basically what Ola's talking about, the book, The Rules. This is a bullshit way to manipulate people, folks. Men who chase women, you will temporarily have a relationship with them. Temporarily relationship with most likely an incredibly dysfunctional human being, okay? It's very rare that a functional, emotionally healthy human being will ever chase someone. Only the immature, dysfunctional, fucked up folks chase people. So yeah, ladies, go for it. Have the guy chase you. Enter into a relationship. And then when he dumps you when his dysfunctionality sets in because you've been sitting back in your feminine energy, don't blame me because I have warned you. Folks, do this work. If you want to really read a great book, instead of this stupid narrative of chasing, read the book, If the Buddha Dated. If the Buddha Dated. This is a brilliant way to learn how to attract a great partner in your life. Stop reading the book, The Rules, and start shifting your narrative, folks, because this stupid manipulative way, this chasing way. By the way, I know you've all been indoctrinated that men are the hunters. Yes. What do we hunt? Is this what we're hunting? I want to be in a relationship. I want to be in a relationship. I want to be in a relationship. That's what I'm hunting. No, men hunt sex. Okay. That's the bottom line. We chase and hunt sex. Okay. Now, we might form a relationship with someone, but only immature people chase and hunt sex. Okay. Emotionally mature human beings invest equally into the process of getting to know one another. Let me repeat that. They equally invest in the process of getting to know one another. And this is why many of you are stuck, because you have this expectation that men are supposed to chase you so you can feel good about yourselves. I don't know how many of you, by the way, ladies, I'm yelling because I witnessed this over and over again. I had a conversation in my private group today, how a woman was upset where two people decided to meet and the man didn't call to plan the date, and she got upset. And my response was, did you reach out to him and ask him what was up? She goes, no, I expected him to do it. Ladies, you have to take ownership in your part. Had she had reached out and then he didn't show up, then I would say, point the finger at him. But you didn't reach out either. Both of you didn't reach out to one another. Stop expecting men to be the leaders of the relationship, because you know, ladies, you already know they're terrible at it anyway. This is why I'm encouraging you to be in charge of your relationship destiny and not leave it to men. Okay, I get riled up, but I think you can understand why. All right, thank you. Oops. Jonathan, your book just arrived yesterday. What the heck is self-love anyway? And the one you always recommend by Dr. John Gottman. Thanks for the wonderful videos. Rosa, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Ola says, men are immature. And I'm going to say women are immature too. We've got to see, this is victim consciousness, pointing the finger at men. If you can't say men, human beings are immature, then you're a victim. I'm sorry, that's my take on it. All right. Desiree says, I'm learning so much. Thank you. Deanna says, if the Buddha Data was a great book, yes, I agree. Joan says, men are initially hunting sex. Exactly. You all know this. What do men think about on a first date? We think about sex. You guys know this. All right. Question by Catherine. So why are men so bad at leading at a relationship? Okay, great question. Okay, remember when I said men in their 20s and 30s are in the hunt for a wife, for someone to make babies with, to raise a family? In their 50s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, in the demographic I talk to, midlife, here's the problem. We're dealing with what's going on in his life. Does he have chaos going on in his life? Is he going through a contentious divorce? Does he have alimony, child support, visitation rights? Does he have issues at work? Does he have health issues? All of these things make a weak foundation, and most people don't know what partnership looks like at midlife, because we were indoctrinated with a stupid TV show called The Brady Bunch. Now, mind you, that these were, Carol Brady and Carol and Mike, they each had 3 children, and somehow magically they were able to blend their lives because Carol didn't have to work and go to work, and she had a nanny, Alice, taking care of everything, okay? That was the way we were indoctrinated into midlife relationships, and that's the furthest thing from the truth, because you're working, you're dealing with you've got your children and your life going on, and because people don't know what partnership looks like. And most men and women in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, after going through a bad divorce, and by the way, 75% of the population who's single and looking for love is divorced in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. They're very reluctant to get remarried. So then what's the point if you're not, then they have nothing to hold on to. So it's just spending time with another human being, companionship, connection, and sex. Without that root, it's very difficult to create this in relation. Folks, let me ask you a question. What happens to a tree in a hurricane wind that has no roots? Whoosh, it blows away. Oops. I don't want to show my armpit stains. A relationship needs to build roots, and most of you do a terrible job. Men and women alike do a terrible job building the roots to a successful relationship because you're not following the book, The 8 Dates. All right. Desiree says, partnership. I needed to learn what that looks like. You know what, folks? I'm going to pull up another book. Okay, hold on a second. This is a business book called The Partnership Charter, how to start out in a new business partnership. This is a business book, but it's such a great book for how to decide how to be in relationship with another human being. Folks, if you don't know how to develop partnership, how the heck can you ever go the distance? And stop being so fucking naive, because I'm yelling at you at the top of my lungs every week, 3 times a week, saying the same thing over and over and over again, but you all expect different results. Stop it. Maybe we all need to do this. Maybe we all need to do this. Read this book. Unfuck yourself. Get out of your head and into your life. Maybe you all need to start getting out of your head and into your life. All right. Is this sinking in, folks? Please let me know by saying amen. Please let me know by saying amen. Question, Mary Jo says. Question. I feel ready for a relationship now and have read many of the book recommendations. Are you suggesting online dating is a good first step? Here's the thing. Actually, I had something in my mouth. It's not quite frankly, it's the only step, because I'm going to ask every one of you, how many of you get asked out by single eligible men on any given week from somebody out in organically? How often are you getting asked out? And I mean a legitimate asked out by the type of guy you want to go out with. How often is this happening? Is it happening 10 times a week, 50 times a week, once a week, or zero? Because if you're not being asked out in organically, there's only one other option. Because the whole meetup groups and going to grocery stores and everything else, that barely ever fucking works. It's a great narrative for people to tell you, but we don't even go to bars anymore. God, I remember in my 20s, we used to go to bars to pick up chicks. That doesn't happen anymore. By the way, all of you are saying never, not often, never, not often. Yeah, that's how often organically. So all we have left is online. Most likely in the next 10 years, 60, 70, or 80% of all first dates will happen through an online connection. And by the way, for people over 45 years old, it's probably going to be up as high as 90% is probably where it's going to be in the next 10 years. That's just the reality of life, because we ain't meeting people organically. Shirley says, I'm dating a workaholic. He loves his job as I do. Now value my time with family and friends. Any suggestions in communicating, prioritizing me without sounding needy? I would prefer you establish what is the standard you're looking for a relationship. Express your standard with him. For example, my standard is we spend 3 or 4 days and nights a week together doing shared activities, hobbies, mutual interests, spending time with family and friends, traveling together, all that kind of stuff. That's my standard. Establish what your standard is, express your standard, see if he'll match that standard. If not, you either come to a compromise or you move on. That's my suggestion. Does that help, Shirley? I hope it does. Irene says, even at bars, nobody talks. I know, I go to bars. And by the way, folks, I don't walk up to a strange woman at a bar unless she gives me the big, come over here, green light. She drops the hanky, because I don't want to walk up to a stranger. All right, Kelly says, dating is that. You date to vet. If you don't like how someone is while dating, leave it alone. Agreed. By the way, thank you all for the amens. I appreciate it. Catherine says, I had a horrible experience with online, but because as you say, Jonathan, I didn't ask the right questions. So the issue wasn't online dating. The issue was you didn't ask the right questions. All right. All right. Joan says, please keep yelling. It gets through. I was raised with very loud parents. Thank you. Joy says, what has been the biggest factor to move us into fear of dating and away from curiosity about each other? I'm going to say, Joy, online dating has bastardized the dating process. It's twofold. Like anything, it has a blessing and a curse. The blessing is you get access to people you wouldn't have access to on your regular, during your on a regular basis. The curse is what's known as the paradox of choice. The paradox of choice. There is now a belief that because we can swipe to so many people that we have a perceived belief of choice. The problem is with too many choices, people can't make a decision, men and women alike. And the minute something doesn't go right with someone, there's this belief that there's always somebody around the corner. Now, technically, there is always someone around the corner, but it's as easy as a swipe away. That's the fantasy. So online dating is a blessing and a curse. You just have to, and that's why I teach in my private coaching how to ask better questions so you can utilize the online dating process more effectively than the haphazard way of just waiting for men to reach out and just praying that he's not going to be some axe murderer. And I'm kidding about the axe murderer. All right. Hey, you know what, folks? It's a little bit past the hour. There's so many great questions here. Kelly says, yes, too many choices for men and women. I agreed. You know, I think this would be a good place to wrap up for the day. Hey, before I wrap up, I just want to repeat those 5 unique qualities high value men find super hot. Number 1, actions matching words. Number 2, taking personal responsibility for choices. Number 3, fighting fair. Number 4, empathy for self and others, and transparency. I want to thank you all for allowing me to enter your life today. I also want to thank you for allowing me to share a little bit of my personal life and my experience that I had on this journey recently with Connor. My hope is we all begin a practice of personal development, self-help, and spiritual work, just like I outlined in my book, What the Heck is Self-Love Anyway? I'm a big proponent of doing spiritual work to get connected with self, because self-love is putting the oxygen mask on yourself first. And the more you love on yourself, the less you're hyper-focused on needing someone else to fulfill yourself. And my invitation for every one of you is to love on yourself so much that you don't need a man to love you, and then a great guy will come into your life, or a great person will come into your life. And that's my invitation for all of you. I want to thank you all so much, and this is a time I'm going to say goodbye. I'm seeing all the thank yous from Kelly, Rhonda, Erica, Kelly, Kimberly. Thank you so much, and it's a good time to give myself a big, gigantic Jonathan Bear hug. And I'm going to reach into the camera and give you a hug of love, if that's okay. And I'm going to ask you to turn to someone, or a pet, or a teddy bear, or pillow, and give it or them a hug of love, because hugs are a great source of love. And let's face it, we could all use more love in our lives. Thanks a bunch. Bye-bye now.